Welcome into this edition of Making the Leap. This will be an interesting one today. We talk with a woman that we met, a couple of decades ago. We met her in college, and she's a sweet, lovely woman. I didn't really think much about her until we started doing this show. You've kept in touch with her over the years.
Right.
She's been exploring private education for her kids for a while now. You'll hear the story and why that is, but what's so unique about her and this story is the reason so many people do not pursue Christian education or private education for their kids, or they just say, I can't because the money. The money. It is the number one without peer, the thing we hear more than anything else. Well, that's fine for you, but I can't afford it. Oh, that sounds nice, but I can't afford it.
Yeah.
I'll just warn you, if that's your attitude and you hear Jenny's story today, you're going to feel silly.
Either that or you're just digging into your stubbornness, and then maybe this is not the route for you.
Yeah.
But I think that's absolutely the convicting message that she shares is one for everybody. I actually think it's a good one for kids to hear, because kids that are sitting in a private school setting, a Christian school setting, or even with even a family where the mom or the dad just decides they're stay home because they know that's best, that is involving everybody, and it's something that everybody needs to come together as a family on in order to make those things work. So I'm excited to share what she has to say and have that conversation, and hopefully maybe change either some minds a little bit, or at least open some minds to this possibility that it is a feasible, doable option to take your child from a free school and move them where you might have to have a little output for it to happen.
Really excited to welcome to the show a woman that Christine and I actually personally know from, well, I won't out her as a long time ago. It makes me feel like a long time ago. She still looks like a kid. We met in college. Jenny Hare is her name now. She's a married lady. I knew her when she was somebody else. But we've known her since our days at Northwest Missouri State University. We knew Jenny, and you and Jenny have kept in touch over the years. I sort of lost touch with her, but you've kept in touch.
And through keeping in touch, I've been able to kind of see the progression, just like everything else, of kids, of life, what's been happening in her world. And
so while you went on to become a school teacher, for instance, tell the backstory about Jenny, what she's gone on to do.
Well, so as Jenny and I have kept in touch, and as I've been watching through social media, I was public school teaching. Jenny was public school teaching for a while, has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. And so there's been just some similarities along with that. But I would watch as her kids were going through the school experience and started to see kind of a trend that I was seeing around all over the place, that her daughter specifically was having struggles on occasion through school.
How long ago?
Jenny, when did you really start to see your oldest? First
of
all, we should ask, what are your...
Well, I mean, I want to tell the story through the prism of your eyes, because it will help us understand Jenny. You started to notice Jenny was making decisions about her public education and her kids before you, and she started talking about this, right?
Oh, yeah, right. When I would see her saying, having some hard times in school, needing a different change, I never really saw, Jenny, you complain about like a public school setting, but I saw that you were looking for some kind of an alternative option for your oldest.
So we want to welcome you in first, Jenny. This was a very clumsy way. We were sort of having a private conversation, and then we sort of clumsily welcomed you into it. But the reason I was trying to set the table is because what I was trying to establish, I think you made this decision well before Christine and I made this decision. Is that accurate?
Yes. My daughter started having trouble when she was, at the entry level of school. We noticed that there was something different about her at the age, probably about 2.5. We noticed that Kate was unique, and she had some differences about her. And so we did all kinds of evaluations, and we determined by the time she was 5 years old and in kindergarten, that she had pretty severe ADHD. And she's not hyperactive, but she had the inattentive type. And so she just has a really hard time paying attention. And that affects her socially as well. And so we noticed from a very early age, as early on as preschool, just the way kids would interact with her, that they weren't very nice and not very inclusive of her. And so there were things that we knew we were going to have to come alongside and help mold and guide and teach throughout her schooling process. So we were aware that there were going to be challenges ahead from the get-go. But it followed her through elementary school, through middle school, through high school, to the point that we decided she needed a really significant change.
But this was like I'm trying to establish timeline-wise, this was how many years ago, roughly?
About 13, when she was in kindergarten. She's 18 now.
And when did you switch? When did you say you were going to be moving her from a public school setting into a private school setting?
We switched her about 3 years ago, I think it was. She was going into her sophomore year of high school when we finally pulled her and decided she needed a real significant change. We needed to get her out of the situation that she was in.
And I don't mean you in any disrespect. Please understand that we come at it from the same, I think, point of view. We probably recognized things well before we made decisions about it. So do you look back on it now and think, we should have jumped well long ago? Yeah.
Oh, yes. But it's a really hard decision to make, especially when you are sending your children to a free education and you're not used to paying a huge bill every year because you have access to what are supposed to be really good schools. We moved to our neighborhood for the school district because
you're out of,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you're in
outside
what state
Omaha
right now?
Okay. Yeah, we're in Nebraska. So we're just outside. We live just outside of Omaha, and we are in a small community. And as a former teacher in the area, I know the school districts, and I, wanted to send our kids to a really good one. So we moved to the neighborhood. Kate started kindergarten in a brand new school, and we were really excited about what they had to offer her. Thought, small community, there's going to be some great connections in the community, and and it is a great community. So I want to be careful because I don't want to bash our school district. We had great teachers. We had a lot of great people, around us, but kids can be mean, and so because she was a little unique and a little different from the pack, she was bullied pretty fiercely to the point that in high school it got to be physical bullying. And so that is when we needed to intervene pretty significantly, and we needed to change. So we started looking around. I had a friend who taught at a private Christian school, and she had recently retired, and she said, Jenny, you just need to take her in there and go look around and see, and don't let the price tag scare you. Just go look. There are ways. Just don't discount it because of the price tag. Just go visit. And I took her there. We did a tour. I spoke to the principal. She was ready to start the very next day.
This story,
awesome.
You have so many unique layers to your story, and I want to dive into each one. May I first ask, the other kids, you have 3. What about the other 2? What's the status there?
Well, so they were doing just fine in their school. When we decided to move them as well, this is their second year. So last year we decided, you know what, the boys are going to. And that was for very different reasons than Kate. She needed intervention, and my boys were doing fine. We left them there. In the schools that they were at, they were liking it just fine. They were doing fine. It got to the point where my youngest son was in middle school, and we started to see some behaviors that he was exhibiting, that we were seeing at school not being addressed. And it just kind of wondering, like, how does this work if we don't have some kind of pull in a different direction for him, what kind of path are we leaving him on, staying in this situation where there's, a group of kids that's not making good choices. There's kids at the lunch table not making good choices. There are fights going on. There are, things that, he's having kids initiate fights with him. And we're having all kinds of different things going on that we were just like, there are red flags going up all over the place here. And then COVID hit, and we pulled, the kids, of course, were home like everybody else was for that short amount of time. Our school did go back in the fall.
Okay.
But there was just being home in that short amount of time was not good for any of the kids. They needed the social interaction. They needed to be able to ask questions in the classroom. There were so many different variables that were going on that we just, nobody, it was good for no one. But after that, it just seemed to snowball into lots of questions that we thought, we just don't think this is a good setting for any of our kids.
Okay.
And so we determined that we were going to pull all three of them out. Now, even up to the point where I had registered, I had enrolled, and I was still telling my kids, well, we really don't know for sure if we're going to be able to afford this. Because here I have gone through, I'm just trusting 1 minute at a time, trusting that God's going to provide, because how on earth are we going to pay for this? So that was really hard.
Yeah.
I know, like I said, there's a lot, and I don't want to interrupt you, but sequentially speaking, you were also a public school teacher. How long did you do that? Or are you still doing that? I'm not sure I know.
Sure. I taught for 5 years in a public school setting as a fourth grade teacher. I absolutely loved my job. I came home full time when Kate was born because I wanted to be a full-time mom. And then 2 years later had our middle son, and 2 years after that had our youngest son. So I wanted to be a full-time mom. That was always our goal from the beginning.
I always think establishing this baseline, the reason I asked, Jenny, is because like Christine, and we've had previous guests, I like to establish the baseline that so many of you come from public school. So when you make these decisions, I think you think about it through the perspective of being a former public school teacher and thinking about the schools, our school district, we have good schools. I think sometimes this decision is viewed as inordinately hostile to public school. It's not. It's about your kids. It's about what's best for your kids more than anything else, right? Yeah.
And so one thing that I wanted to ask you, so when you're sitting there saying, okay, we need to move our daughter. We know we don't have an option. You haven't even really tackled your other two kids. Two things stick out to me. Number one, like you said, it's a big financial leap, but luckily I think you're sending the right message. You had a friend tell you, just go and look at it, put everything else aside, just go and look, even though, there's a price tag associated with it. I think that's the first key piece, but then, the second key piece is you do know you're going to be looking at two other kids behind them and thinking, what are we going to need to do? So you have to have a way to accommodate that cost. And so I'm sure behind the scenes, that conversation was a big one.
Yes. And even my boys seeing the benefits of her small school and the things she was able to do, they were like, well, we want to go there too. And I was like, you're fine where you are.
Yeah.
Interesting. So which I think is interesting because, right, when your kids are saying like, what about us? And you're like, well, you're fine. You're fine.
They wanted to go before you were ready to let them go. Okay. Interesting.
Which I like the honesty though. And I give you credit there though on that honesty, because there is that like gut clenching, like, oh yeah, well that's times 3. That tuition is times 3 if you go. So you're good. And ignoring what is in our gut that we know that there's probably not.
Jenny, will you tell us what you and your husband, when you knew it was time to put your daughter in a private setting, you knew something had to be done. But I mean, if you're to be raw and honest with us, you're still thinking the math, the money. That's the driving thing, right?
Yes. And for our situation, we have a unique situation that's maybe different than a lot of people. Both of us are self-employed. So my husband does bathroom remodeling. You know, our situations are no work, no pay. We don't get paid vacation. We don't get retirement. We don't get health insurance. There's so many things that don't come along with a package, like when you are employed by a corporation or, you know, some kind of business. When we operate that ourselves, then all of our extra expenses come out of just what we are able to make on a daily basis. So that changes things for us too, because we have to work extra hard just to pay for all the extra little things, like, you know, my son just had an appointment to get glasses, and that is just all out of pocket for us. So, you know, our situation is work harder so that we can pay for our normal things. But on top of that, I am a cancer survivor. So we have already had crazy medical bills, you know, on a regular basis anyway. So there's that added extra piece. That being said,
okay, go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
How long ago did you battle cancer? In sequential order, you went through cancer. How long ago? Your treatments? Talk us a little through that. Was that prior to putting your daughter in?
Yes. So I was diagnosed 11 years ago. Kate was in first grade. I had a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old when I went through cancer treatments. It took 2.5 years to get through from start to finish. So it was a lengthy process, lots of complications and lots of issues that went along with that. But that was on top of trying to, you know, help my daughter get an IEP to be, you know, to get services for school, and to, you know, help her to get a little extra acknowledgement that she had a difficult time, you know, paying attention in school, so that she would just have the ability to take tests in a quiet place, or, you know, just accommodations. She wasn't so severe that she needed one-on-one attention. She just needed an IEP to be recognized to have some accommodations.
So you have then
all of that at once.
Yeah.
Well, and I just to finish this point, and then I'm sorry, Christine, but I'm sorry to be vulgar about this, but you're being pretty candid, so I appreciate it, because I think it's important people hear this. You probably amassed, I would assume, given your situation, a tremendous amount of medical debt. Yes.
Well, and we just tried hard to always pay our bills. So we don't have outstanding debt. We just don't get to we don't get the extra benefits of going on grand vacations every year.
Well, let's just say it ate about every spare nickel you had. There wasn't extra walking around money when it was all over, is what you're saying.
No extra money. We have enough, and that is enough for us. We just have enough, and we've always told our kids we have enough. We don't have an abundance. We have enough. And so therefore, when it was time to send all 3 kids to school, and my husband and I were so both on board with this without question. I was so thankful that we didn't have an issue between the two of us, like, should we, shouldn't we? We both were in agreement that this needed to happen. And when it came time, we looked at what we had, and, you know, we applied for the financial aid, you know, because we work our tails off to pay all the extra other things. We didn't qualify for much financial aid because they don't take into account that you have to pay all these other medical things, or they, you know, you're paying for everything out of your pocket for everything else. So when we didn't get a lot of financial aid, but we had saved enough in our savings that we were able to write a check and take it in. It's cheaper to do that, to pay a one-time lump sum, than it is to pay monthly. They give you a discount if you pay it one lump sum. So we were able to go and take a check in. We wiped our entire savings.
So,
now that's a leap.
That's a big jump.
That's making a leap.
And that is what I think is so tremendous, because I literally just have this picture of you like, okay, you know, check in hand, here you go. And you're handing it over, hoping that
tears in my eyes. Yes.
And by
And
yeah.
oh, that was hard.
And be honest, did your husband, I mean, you said it was hard for you. Did your husband, was there ever a moment where you said, maybe this is dangerous financially? Maybe we
never did.
Never did. Okay.
Which
we trusted that God would provide for our needs. And we just prayed, Lord, if there is, if we have an issue with, the car, or if we have an issue with a medical situation and we need the money, we trust that you will provide ways for us to work harder, or some kind of provision that we are just going to hand it over to you. And, my husband is a very, very hardworking man, and he would do anything for our family. And if he needed to take on another job, he would.
So that's my other question then, or I guess one of the questions that I have. So you hand that money over for the 1 year's tuition, but you still know you have, another year ahead of you. Right. And then you don't know yet, but your other two are going to be coming along behind, so as you wrote that first check, you really didn't know that those other two were going to come. So, and when you say, God provides, he will provide enough. I believe that. I know Chris believes that, but I know there are people that have that hesitation and they kind of scoff at that because they say, well, money's not raining down from heaven. But I think what's important to note is what you just said. You have a husband who's working hard. You have some opportunities in front of you where you are working hard. And I think that is important to ask. What then do you do to replace that money so that you have that second year of tuition
You're
coming?
not sitting around.
You're not laying there.
When you say God provides, people shouldn't misconstrue that as you guys sit around and pray and hope somebody delivers a satchel of money on your front porch.
No, money does not appear in our mailbox. We do not have any outside help. Our families do not have the means to help us. We work really hard all year to make that July payment.
And so tell me what you do to help make that end. I know you said your husband does bathroom remodeling. Tell me what you do. Tell me or maybe what your kids might do to kind of help bring all this together.
I'm so glad you asked that. Well, first of all, I am an art teacher. I started an art studio in my home about 13 years ago, before I was diagnosed with cancer. And it started because I wanted to teach my own kids art. And actually, it's funny. I went to school to become an elementary school teacher, but I also got an art certification. So that was my emphasis. And so I am certified to teach art as well. And I just plan on using that in my classroom. But after I came home full time and my kids, I'm looking for engaging activities for them to do. I had a passion for art. They had a passion for art. So we would sit at the kitchen table every day and do projects together. And I would teach them how to draw, and I would show them different tools and techniques. And one year when my youngest he was about 2, I said, I have a degree in this. Maybe I should just throw some tables down in the basement and invite some friends' kids, some neighbors, whoever. I'll put some flyers out in the neighborhood and offer some art classes in the summer. We'll earn a little extra money, and that can be our fun money, because at the time we had one income, and we didn't have anything. Things were tight, but one income was really hard, but it was a priority for us at the time for me to stay home. So we earned a little extra money that way, but my business snowballed very quickly into other people talking about it and saying, hey, when are you going to offer more classes? That was really great. Can I get in on that? Hey, a friend of mine wants in on it too. And pretty soon my husband said, I think you really have something here. And so he remodeled the basement for me, and we set it up as a full-time art studio. And it turned out to be a really great thing, because he tried to go back to school. That's a story for another time. But I needed to make more money so that he could go back to school. And this was something that my kids did alongside me. So I didn't need daycare for them. I would offer classes after school, and my children would sit in and do the classes with us. And so it was a huge benefit for my children And then also we were making some income teaching other kids. Now it's my full-time job. I teach classes during the day for homeschool kids and after school for after-school kids, and then weekends and, birthday parties. I do all sorts of stuff. Okay. And my business just won what just was voted best in Omaha. So it is
oh my
just
gosh.
me. I'm just this one woman show, and my studio is still in my basement, and it's become something that we can live on, and it's really helpful.
So you have become, well, I'm sorry to interrupt. To your point, God provides. Boy, what a God moment, what a God story that you could never see coming on your own. But you're interesting because you have 3 kids now in a school, but you are helping homeschoolers now with the business you do.
Right.
Now, and so you're in essence you were homeschooling before you knew you were homeschooling is really what you were doing, weren't you?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? That, just helping. There's a big community of homeschoolers in our area, and so there wasn't, something like that for kids who really wanted to grow with their art skills at the time, other than, other parents teaching at a learning center or something like that. But so I provide something unique for the kids. But as far as God providing, He allows me to work. He's made me healthy again. I'm able to work. I'm capable of working, and He keeps bringing people in. And so I count that as His provision when my classes fill up. And so then I have the regular income coming in. I'm not worrying about, am I going to fill this class? We've worked really hard as a family to grow this business. And even my kids, all of them have been involved. We call it a family business because everybody has to help. My kids know how to set up and clean up after classes. They know what materials are needed and how to put them out. My husband is kind of like the behind the scenes guy who's always looking for ways to help me improve things. And he comes down and he'll vacuum for me. He'll wipe everything down. He washes my paintbrushes. So he's just kind of like that quiet behind the scenes guy that's always working, helping me out. And, it's been a great benefit for our family.
I think that's really neat because it probably started as maybe a small, like you said, a small hobby, some small fun money, but really it has become something that is sustaining. And like you said, that is provision from God. That is what people mean, I think, when they say God will provide. Like He gives us these skills to utilize. He gave you the art skill. He gave your kids this helpful skill that they understand, even if they maybe don't always love when they have to do something to help. They do. Your husband helping. And I think that really goes to show what I think that faith in action, and being eyes wide open. You had something right in front of you and you were able to utilize it in this magnificent way.
If everything were equal, Jenny, and you could do it all over again, knowing everything you know now, like if I hit rewind, you have the same 3 kids, you have the same husband, even the same cancer. Do you ever put them in public school? Do you become a public school teacher, or do you think about education entirely differently if you hit rewind? Everything's the same, but your kids are brand new again.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? I'm so thankful that we've gone through the challenges that we have. I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't know better if I hadn't had seen the other side of the coin. And so I think having that public school knowledge as a former educator and then putting my kids where they were, I think has allowed them to appreciate where they are now so much more. My middle son, he's 16. He's the greatest. He's the greatest kid. I love him so much. But he is so grateful. And he tells me every day, Mom, thank you. He will say to me, Mom, I know it was a sacrifice. Thank you so much for sending me there. He loves his new school so much that he is constantly thanking us for, and he knows, we even explain to the kids, you guys, we're not going to be able to eat out very much. You're not going to get a $100 pair of basketball shoes. There are going to be sacrifices for our family. Are you willing to be a part of this with us? Because it's going to mean that everybody, you can't have the latest iPhone and you can't have, and we didn't do that kind of stuff for our kids before, but it just, was a good reminder to them that this is a sacrifice for us. And we are giving everything that we have, and we don't have much extra. So when, I'll tell you, even now, I have my living room set up with a little shop, and we've spent, as a family, the last 4 or 5 weeks creating handmade items to be sold. I do an open house every year, and that's what pays for Christmas. So we are still doing the little things. And even though, yes, my business is doing very well, I have a lot of materials costs.
Right.
The cost of operations is pretty high. And so even though, I charge for a class, and some of my kids will say, "Oh, Miss Jenny, you must be rich because you have to pay for classes." And I'll say, that's really funny because most of that money went to your materials, but it's
right.
It's okay. And so we do what we can to earn a little extra through the year, but it takes extra work. So we spent the last 4 or 5 weeks every night. I would teach classes until 6. And then I would work until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, making little ornaments and little Christmas decorations and putting together art kits and things that people could come in and purchase. And every little tiny sale adds up, and that's how we pay for Christmas.
You're one of the most decent people that we know. Yeah, you're a wonderful person. You've always been a wonderfully sweet person. So I know your answer is no. I know what your answer is going to be is no. But I can't help but wonder, you must encounter people who tell you all the time, "Well, that's nice for you, but we could never afford it." You must want to kind of lunge across the table at people who say that to you, I would think.
What I do have people say that. It's not very often. I think most of the people who take my classes see the value, and they know me. We get to know each other. I'm very personable, very personal with my students and with their parents. And so when those families get to know me and their kids and I have a connection and we have a relationship, they can't wait to sign up for the next one. And
I'm sorry, I meant specifically your kids in private school, though. Parents saying that you put your 3 kids in a private school. "Oh, we could never afford that."
Right.
Yeah. And so, if they only knew the work behind the scenes that we invest and sacrifice in order to make that happen for our kids. And we can't explain and show people, here's what it looks like behind our closed door.
Right.
But we're going to tell you that it was worth every penny, and we'll put whatever effort we need to into it. We're going to use our God-given talents and abilities. And as long as he provides people to, keep our income coming in, then we have the means to save and pay. And we're going to just be careful and good stewards of what comes in so that we can save up that money until that July payment needs to go out. And then we start all over at ground zero again.
And so I think that's tremendous. I mean, that is one thing that really strikes me is you've gone from writing the one check. Now you're writing one check that's tripled. And you're doing it through your own personal work. And I think that's the message that some parents honestly just need to hear and wrap their heads around, that it is sacrifice. It is going to be sacrificial. Yes, there are some people I think that can write that check and it doesn't even faze them. But I think the majority of us are writing a check, and there's a thought process behind it. There's okay, we just did this financially. Now what? That kind of thing. And I'm so glad that you're sharing what you're sharing, because sometimes those tough decisions need to be made, and there has to be some honest conversation about it. And I love that you're sharing it.
And don't you want, I'm not going to speak to anybody in particular, Jenny, but we all know, because I know this about myself. If you really wanted to go through a month's worth of a bank statement with me and talk about where I spend money,
right,
I think we could probably squeeze a couple of extra bucks out of me if I were to be honest. If you're auditing my expenses every month, right?
Yeah.
And if we're all auditing ourselves, when you say, "Oh, I couldn't afford to send my kids," can we crunch some numbers first and really make it happen? Maybe we could get closer, right, if we're honest?
Yes,
well, I
think that it could work for any family. And there is help for, there is financial aid help for people who really need it. And there, you have to apply for it. So go through the work, put the application in. It's no small thing. You know, they want to know pretty much everything there is to know about you and your financial life. It's like, wow, I can't believe some of the questions they ask. But, you know, you take the time to fill out the paperwork, submit it, and see. And maybe the Lord will provide in that way. And if God doesn't provide in the way of financial aid through whatever school that you're looking at, then you have to ask yourself, where can we make cuts? We cut our cable out. You know, we stopped eating out unless it was necessary. You know, there were things in our budget that we said, you know, we could do without this. We could live without this. And we made those cuts, and then see where you can squeeze a little bit further. You know, if you're really looking through the budget, Chris, I think that you're exactly right. You could squeeze out, you know, maybe you're not doing a Starbucks run once a week. And even those little things can help. So it's true. It adds up over time. So what kind of abilities and talents and gifts do you have that you're able to share with other people that might bring in a little extra, like our little holiday open house that we do. And it's just a seasonal thing, but you know, my husband's out there cutting boards and sanding and staining things for me so I can decorate. We're working as a family to make it happen. So what can you do? And, you know, maybe you have an ability to, you know, bless people in a small way and offer some kind of handmade thing, or maybe you have a service. Maybe you're good at fixing computers or replacing broken iPhone, you know, covers or something like that. There's a lot of people that have gifts and abilities that they're able to profit from.
That's very true. I'm so glad that we were able to have you on today, just to have this a conversation about finances that we haven't talked too much about, but I really wanted to have you on because I thought the specifics behind this were important. The specifics about the whole family chipping in, the specifics about.
You're doing it the hard way.
Right.
This is not just you've stopped spending at Starbucks. I mean, you're one of the more extreme stories that we know of personally that's making it work. So I mean,
but
your
that's
story
why
is
it's
kind of like
important to tell.
like if you can make it work, then I suspect a lot of people listening who've been on the fence about it and thinking I can't afford it. Maybe they'll have a different
like you
perspective.
have to start letting go of like, well, the medical bills, but this, but that. Like we have 3 kids. We don't have one.
I wish we could let go of the medical bills. That's not going anywhere. But we are a hardworking family, and our kids help out. The husband helps out. We all contribute together, and we know that it's worth every penny. So we work hard at it with joy. I mean, it's not burdensome, if that makes sense, because we love the benefit of seeing what the kids are able to do. They're able to play all the sports. They're able to participate in plays. My son is taking a sewing class because he wants to, and not because, you know, he's like, hey, you know, my buddies are doing it. We're going to make something cool together. And so we're going to go do that. But they have opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise at their other schools. And so it's been a blessing to watch them grow and have such good friends and meet the families. And it's a small community of families. And so we all have to volunteer a lot. There's always extra expenses for everything you're involved in because there aren't funds to be able to provide
covered.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that, but boy, is it worth it? And I would definitely do it sooner, Chris, if I could go back, but I am thankful, since I can't go back, I am thankful that we can now see the difference and between the two, that the kids are so happy. They are flourishing. My daughter graduated with a 3.0 as a kid who had an IEP, moved to our new school, and they didn't have services for kids who were in special ed. So no IEP in her new school. She was able to graduate with a 3.0, is in college, is successful. She's grown into a lovely adult, and moving to that new school, she would tell you, saved her life. If you had a conversation with her, she would tell you she was it was just really bad where she was. And if we hadn't intervened and made that decision on her behalf, she might not be here to tell her story. So it was a crucial decision for us, for her. But then seeing the benefits she had and seeing the difference between the two schools, with our boys, we knew we needed to bring them right along after her.
You've given me a great idea for another show. We need to do we should have you back and hold your thought on your daughter. I would like to do another show because I hear this a lot too, this IEP notion, kids with special needs and going to private Christian school.
Right,
and
that it's not possible.
And that it's not there, or I
Right.
don't have that. So we're going to have you back to talk about that another time. But can you believe if we met something like 25 years ago, the three of us? Can you believe what's come of us? Can you believe all that's happened? Who would have seen this coming? Any of it?
Chris, your wife is as lovely as ever. She hasn't changed a bit.
I agree. I agree completely.
Well, I hope I've changed a little, or I'm not sure I'd be sitting here. So that part's good.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny, so much.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Absolutely.
I'm so thankful for what you are doing. So keep on spreading the word, and likewise.
We will. We will. Take care.
God bless, Jenny. Thanks.
Thanks, you guys.
So I feel like after talking with her, number one, I want to go back and start analyzing my Starbucks purchases, the extra things, because really, doesn't that make a difference? It's those small things that add up, and I think they can snowball and become big help. Like,
I hate.
I mean, if we're
admitting
being
that
honest,
a round of golf.
Right.
I mean, I can drop anywhere from, depending on the course, $50 to $75 a round on golf in a round.
And all that really boils down to is just a sacrifice. It's just that sacrifice of giving something up to get something, which I've said before. But what's more important in the long run? And to hear her say it saved her daughter's life. I mean, we didn't go into specifics with her on that. But I have a feeling if we pressed, she's not being dramatic. I have a feeling that has probably made such a complete difference in her daughter's life
and she really did inspire a different show in my mind about IEPs and special needs kids.
Yes.
I think we should do a show on that.
I think we should, because all of these are the stumbling blocks that people want to keep saying, but, and I think you have to at some point say, well, like we've been hearing, press into the Lord, take the steps, make the changes, and trust that when you are advocating for your kids, you are doing exactly what needs to be done, and it is going to work.
2 mothers, 2 public school teachers, 2 cancer patients.
Back to back, yeah. Isn't that really something?
If that's not convicting to those of us who have been blessed with health.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I mean, if these women going through cancer can do this, I mean, who can't?
Right. You find the way. Right. You just have to find the way to push through.
If you have the will. If you have now, look. If it's fine if you want to look yourself in the mirror and say, "I don't."
I'm
that
not
seems
willing
like too
to
much
do that.
trouble. I'm not willing.
Yeah.
Fine, but be honest about it.
Right.
Let's stop saying I can't.
I can't.
You can. Are you willing?
I agree. And how many times do we say that to our kids? I think about how many over the years. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But really, as adults, maybe you have the 3rd extra car. Let's get rid of it. Yeah. Maybe you don't need the 5-bedroom house. A 3-bedroom house will work. There are actual literal ways that are not just a quick fix. They're going to take effort and work behind them, but it's doable.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm glad that we're talking finances in a way that is a little bit more
practical,
honest, and practical. Yes.
I hope you'll give this a 5-star review and a written review. Apple iTunes is where you can write the review, and we hope that you do, because that helps us spread the good word. Give it a 5-star at Apple iTunes or Spotify. Send us a note on social media. Maybe you have a guest idea yourself or a story you think would be compelling for the show. We'd love to hear from you.
I mean, because we are figuring out, I mean, that was a great example of just, we are going to do a show about this. We'd love to hear that. And you can send us those at hello@makingtheleappodcast.com. That's a good email for us. And you can reach us on Facebook and Instagram at Making the Leap Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, making_the_leap podcast. And we will be back with you next week.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please rate and comment on the show, as well as subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Making the Leap.